Hello Orchid friends, how are you? Welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to take a look at some of my Phalaenopsis orchid complex hybrids that I have purchased and want to give you an update on their bloom progress, bloom updates. If this is your first time watching my video, my channel is all about orchids, from what orchids I have, how I grow them, my thoughts on certain orchid topics, to what orchids are blooming, etc. So if you want to follow along my orchid hobby adventure, consider subscribing to my channel and turn on the notification. What you're seeing here is Phalaenopsis green Pixie. That's what it says on the tag that it came with. But recently, one of my Chinese subscribers shared that if it's green, like this flower, green, but with white/yellow lips, it actually has a different name. It's called Green Fairy, which I love even more. You know, before somebody told me that this particular orchid is called Wasabi in Taiwan, but now, you know, somebody else is telling me that it actually has a different name, Green Fairy. And Wasabi is actually very similar. It's exactly the same shades of green, but that kind of flower, Wasabi, would have red lips. This orchid is now in full bloom. It only had one bud blasted. That bud was the last bud on the flower spike, and it was a very, very tiny bud that turned yellow. Right now it's in full bloom and I really love it. This one, I currently have it on my kitchen counter, so it doesn't have a whole lot of natural light, but because my kitchen always have a LED light on the ceiling, so it does still receive adequate light. And so far it's going really strong, and the picture you're seeing is the latest bloom on its spike. And it's smaller as expected than the first bloom on the orchid spike, but it's just lovely. Now let's take a look at 3 other orchids that I have. These are pretty much in full bloom. Well, the one in the middle still has 1 bud, and the one on the far left has probably 3 to 4 buds remain to open. They are all doing really well, considering that, you know, it's winter time and they had a pretty significant change of environment from stores to my home. This one in particular, now it's working on opening its buds on the branch. But I also noticed that this flower, the newer flowers are opening with more white flares, white edges. And somebody told me, one of my Chinese subscribers told me that this is a sign of this particular complex hybrid cross having not as stable genetics in its making. I don't know if you guys also have learned about this kind of genetic stabilities when it comes to orchid blooms and their traits, but you know, it's interesting. The one on the far left is called Cherry. It has a tag. Like I said, Trader Joe's recently has been upping their games in getting orchids with tags. And the reason I got this orchid was really purely because of the leaves that you're seeing. I love orchids with mottled leaves. And because it's winter time currently, how I give water to this orchid is I basically only provide 1/4 cup of water and let it run through the media. And then I let it sit outside of the decorative container for 1 day or 2, and then I put it back into it because I do not want the high moisture and low air ventilation to be surrounding the root system inside the decorative container. And here's the bloom picture of this particular orchid. I think it's okay, but my friends love it. Now let's look at the one in the middle. The reason I got this one was really purely because of the spots, the pattern of the flower. It's just very interesting looking. I have another similar one called Phalaenopsis Sesame, and it's white background with very, very intense dark spots throughout the entire flower. This particular one already has 1 oldest flower dropping, which is normal, but I think it's dropping sooner than I had expected. This particular cross that I'm observing, it just doesn't have as strong or long-lasting blooms as what I would expect from a complex hybrid. So I'm not sure if it's this particular cross, or maybe it's because it's wintertime, or I'm just not giving it enough feed. Plus, I mean, it's in flower, so I usually don't feed orchids when they're in flowers, or maybe very low dosage of fertilizer. Now what you see here is its strong root system. It's potted pretty much in pure sphagnum with a little bit of sprinkle of bark chips on the very top, which I'm a little, confused why they do that, because sphagnum moss is very water retentive. Why do they throw in a couple bark chips on top? That is kind of beyond me, but we'll see how this one does. And here are the blooms picture. Basically, I really think this one looks really charming, but like I said, the only drawback or downside of this particular cross is that its flowers aren't really lasting very long. And these flowers have opened inside of my home, so I know how long they last. They didn't come in pretty much full bloom when I purchased it, so we'll see. Maybe the second flowering at my environment will be stronger and longer lasting. Up next is our small white Phalaenopsis orchid. This one is interesting in that its older flowers would have a white background with a hint of pink, whereas the newer flowers would open with a yellowish orange tint to it. I mean, its lip is yellow/orange, but I'm talking about the petals and the sepals. When they first open, they have that yellowish, orange-ish tint, which is really different from the older flowers with white or pink background, as you can see in the video here. And this one, when I purchased it, it only had maybe 5 flowers open on the main flower spike, and my goal then was try to avoid as many bud blasts as possible, and I think I did a pretty good job providing constant temperature and humidity inside my grow space. So the result was basically each flower spike, at the very end of it, the small tiniest buds blasted on each of the branch or spike. That's it. And then the rest of these blooms successively opened without any bud blast. So I'm really happy about that. And this one really is a very charming little orchid. I mean, it's not little, but the flowers are so tiny, but it just looks very prosperous. You may not think that it is significant to successfully avoid bud blast, but I had a really bad experience when I was still trying to learn orchids. I bought an orchid with just buds, and when it came home, after a week, all the buds blasted, so that was a very horrific experience for me. So I learned it the hard way, so when orchids come in full bloom or having very minor tiniest bud blast is a great success for me personally. So I thought I would share that story with you in case you wonder why I'm so excited about having no bud blast or having little bud blast. And do you remember the 2 orchids that I have in my office? I purchased them after New Year's Day, and so far they're doing really great. I'm one of the few people on my floor with orchids on their desks, and I personally think orchids are great zen/feng shui orchids. What's interesting about this one is that on Chinese New Year Day, the last 2 buds opened. So it's a very good sign for me, according to my American colleagues. It's a good sign to have full bloom on a Chinese New Year's Day. But I think personally it doesn't matter when it is, right? When your orchids become full bloom without any bud blast, it's a great day. Now this is just a close-up of the orchids, the last blooms of these two orchids. And here's the other orchids I have on my desk. This one, every time I look at it, it reminds me of the giant panda, right? Because of the color combination and how the darker spots are centered around the orchid flowers. This one came in full bloom before last orchid did. So maybe it is a good sign for my work, for my job, for the new coming year. Okay, this is all I have for you today. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. If you'd like to get more orchid related videos from my channel, please subscribe and turn on the notification. Happy growing everyone. I'll talk to you in my next video. Ciao!